In 1883, Oscar Wilde arrived in Paris and put his aesthetic posing behind him. He replaced his knee breeches with the highest fashion of the day, a flower in the buttonhole of an impeccable suit, gold-tipped cigarettes in a polished silver case, white gloves and an elegant cane. At 28, Wilde declared,
"The Oscar of the first period is dead."
He lounged about Paris visiting the A-list celebrities of the day, Émile Zola, Victor Hugo, Edgar Degas, and Camille Pissarro. And he spent some time writing The Duchess of Padua, a new play he promised for American actress Mary Anderson.
She turns it down flat. This is, of course, a great disappointment. So he then goes back to London and he starts lecturing. And one of the new lectures that he puts into his repertoire is personal impressions of America. So he takes this around England, and he also takes it over to Dublin, and there he re-meets, it's not for the first time, my grandmother, Constance Lloyd.
"My dear Lil, I'm going to be married to a beautiful young girl named Constance Lloyd, a grave, slight violet-eyed little Artemis with great coils of heavy brown hair, which make her flower-like head droop like a flower. We are to be married in April."
It's very important, I think, that Wilde doesn't seem to have any sense of himself being homosexually inclined at the time when he was married.
Once married, the couple moved into a home on Tite Street in London, where their first son, Cyril, was born in 1885, followed 17 months later by their second son, Vivian. By all accounts, Wilde was a devoted and fun-loving father who channeled his own childlike energy into playtime with his children.
He built sandcastles with them. He got down on his knees and, played trains, and they rode on his back. And he was a real active, fun father.
But by 1887, the once flamboyant Wilde was bored with conventional Victorian family life. So at 32, he put himself back in the spotlight when he accepted a job as editor of the popular magazine, The Ladies' World.
"We should deal not merely with what women wear, but with what they think and what they feel. The Ladies' World should be made the recognized organ for the expression of women's opinions on all subjects of literature, art, and modern life."
Wilde changed the name of the magazine to The Woman's World and solicited articles from prominent women in London society.
He was picking up a lot of the aspects of the magazines today. Celebrities sell magazines, and it gave him the opportunity to go to, Countess this and Lady that, and say, will you write me a few words on whatever?
Days at the office were followed by society dinners and parties without Constance. They'd had 2 children together whom Oscar dearly loved, but he would not and could not be the typical husband.
Oscar made some astounding statements to Frank Harris when his wife, Constance, his long-suffering wife, Constance, became pregnant. He said that he became physically revolted by her. He describes having to open the window and breathe fresh air and wipe her kiss off his mouth, because the slim, beautiful body, rather resembling a boy's, we think, that he once admired, became swollen and heavy and thick with pregnancy. He could not bear it.
It was around this time that Wilde began tutoring a young Cambridge student named Robbie Ross. Ross would become Wilde's closest friend and confidant, and eventually the executor of his estate. But by most accounts, the two were more than just friends, a relationship that started when Oscar eagerly caved to the seductions of his young suitor. As Wilde would later write,
"I can resist anything but temptation."
It begins as an experiment which he willingly goes into, he's attracted by, but it's very soon that he discovers that this isn't an experiment, this is for real. And it opens up a totally new side to him of his own sexuality and of his own nature. He begins to lead, as he necessarily had to, this slightly double life.
We really cannot define how much it meant to him to realize that it was his own sex for whom his preference was. What is important, of course, is that he certainly was to use his homosexual consciousness in the development of some extremely interesting work.
In 1890, Lippincott's magazine published The Picture of Dorian Gray. The story hinted at sin and decadence on every page, and its thinly veiled homosexual undertones shocked staid Victorian society. Protagonist Dorian Gray trades his soul for eternal youth. With each immoral deed, a portrait of him grows older and uglier, while he stays young.
It was so scandalous to the Victorian public that it created literally hundreds of column inches in the press of really very vituperative criticism. To him, the succès de scandale of having this first novel roundly criticized by virtually all the newspapers was, on the contrary, something which was absolutely marvelous. It put him right in the forefront of British writing at the time.
On the heels of Dorian Gray, Wilde published a flurry of essays and short stories that secured his reputation as a serious writer. But in just 4 short years, the society that had celebrated his public persona would persecute him for his private deeds.